welcome back to Vintage Disney Halloween here on Brian's Things That Are Cool. It's time to talk about the scariest of all the ghouls, the Boogedy Man. Boogedy Boogedy Boo. This is Mr. Boogedy and Bride of Boogedy. Mr. Boogedy was a pilot for a TV series that never came to fruition. Instead, it became the April 20th, 1986 episode of The Magical World of Disney. Mr. Boogedy started life as a script by Michael Janovar called Cheap Thrills. It was a parody of horror films in the same vein as Airplane and written as a vehicle for Cheech and Chong. The script was rewritten and watered down when Columbia Pictures rejected it and Disney picked it up. I'll admit I didn't grow up on Mr. Boogedy. I only watched it about 2 years ago when Disney Plus launched. That said, this movie is crazy, but also kind of amazing. It's hard to really say why they're so good other than to say they're beyond bizarre. The characters are strange, the acting choices are strange, every detail is just strange. So what's the story of Mr. Boogedy? Richard Masur stars as Carlton Davis, who has just moved his business and his family to the town of Lucifer Falls, where it turns out that their new house is haunted. They find this out from Lucifer Falls one-man welcoming committee and local historian Neil Witherspoon, played by Gomez Addams himself, John Astin, who, after greeting the new family, immediately tells them to get out. The Davis family is unfazed by this and start making themselves at home. Usually in a haunted house movie, the family isn't too memorable. They're just there to be scared of ghosts. The Davises, on the other hand, are very memorable, mostly for being so whacked out. The father owns a novelty shop and he loves what he does for a living. The family spends a good portion of the film playing pranks on each other, each more ridiculous than the last. So desensitized by the gags, the father, after seeing slimy ghost footprints on his wall, says to himself, "I can sell these." Even the kids get into the act. The two boys, one played by David Faustino from Married with Children, and one played by Benji Gregory from Alf, love gags just as much as their father. It's interesting to note that David Faustino won the part of Corwin Davis over Joaquin Phoenix. Don't worry about Joaquin, he did okay for himself. He guest starred on Superboy. The older sister, played by Kristy Swanson, doesn't really get into the gags as much, despite going on to fight other supernatural beings 6 years later. As these things go, pretty soon things start moving on their own, so the kids go to learn a little history about the house itself. John Astin, who as it turns out isn't that bad of a guy, helps them out with this by bringing out the Book of Records. And nobody questions the fact that it's a pop-up book. In a flashback in which the pop-up book comes to life, we learn about our main ghoul, Mr. Boogedy. Boogedy, it turns out, was a former New England pilgrim who was something of a town grump and scared away all the children by yelling boogedy boogedy boogedy. He ends up making a deal with the devil to gain a magic cloak with special powers, as you do, after killing himself, a woman he loves that doesn't like him back, and her son by blowing up his house. He's thereby cursed to haunt every house built on the property his house was on. This, of course, leads to the Davis family having to endure everything from strange noises to things moving by themselves. Now they must get together to get rid of Mr. Boogedy forever. You would think that after being defeated by a vacuum cleaner in the first one, Mr. Boogedy would stay in the afterlife. But no, the very next year, he was back for more. In Bride of Boogedy, which premiered on April 12, 1987, it's a year after the Davises defeated Boogedy, and Carlton has opened his gag shop in an abandoned wax museum. And he's so well liked by the town, he's named honorary mayor of the annual Lucifer Falls Festival. This doesn't sit very well with the general store owner, played by Eugene Levy, who wants the family out of town at any cost. Levy takes it upon himself to dress up as Mr. Boogedy and scare the daughter, this time around played by Tammy Lauren. There are a couple recastings in Bride of Boogedy. Not only is Kristy Swanson absent this time around, but Benjamin Gregory, too busy with Alf, handed the role of Ari Davis over to Joshua Rudoy, who would go on to play a vengeful spirit in Flatliners a few years later. And John Astin opted out of the film, making them create the character of Neil Witherspoon's brother, here played by Leonard Frey, in his final role. Nothing against Frey, but John Astin is surely missed here. As the daughter is getting spooked by Eugene Levy, the boys have a nightmare about visiting Boogedy's grave, so their parents, in an attempt to calm their kids down, hold a phony seance. Unfortunately, this fake seance works a little too well and Boogedy rises from the grave seeking his magic cloak. After a failed attempt to possess Carlton, who himself is no stranger to being taken over by monsters,
Sorry I'm late. Well, let's see who's here.
he briefly takes over the body of Eugene Levy, and once Boogedy gains back his power, abducts Carlton's wife to make her, what else, the Bride of Boogedy. So the Davises must defeat Mr. Boogedy again, this time, hopefully, once and for all. For family films, the Mr. Boogedy series does a great job creating a spooky atmosphere with their traditional horror elements and creepy music. The first film clocks in at 45 minutes, while the second is feature length, and both have some fun, if rather dated, effects. I love the green glow of Mr. Boogedy. They offer jokes and slapstick that counter the horror aspects with a lighthearted tone, creating thoroughly enjoyable family Halloween movies. The Mr. Boogedy series has its faults, but with haunted houses, graveyards at night, and ghastly ghosts, they're forgotten treasures that deserve their place alongside the best family flicks of the season. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed my look at Mr. Boogedy and Bride of Boogedy. If you want to be kept up to date as to when I release a new video, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. And if you really want to be notified, hit that bell as well. I'm Brian, and I'll see you next time.